And kasama natin ngayong umaga. Joining us this morning is the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Philip Goldberg. Good morning, Ambassador Goldberg, and welcome to News to Go, and welcome to the Philippines. You've been here just 6 months.
6 months.
And already an exciting time. You hosted President Obama a couple of weeks ago, and frankly, a lot of Filipinos were relieved that nothing bad happened, except for maybe some bad singing at the state dinner.
But, it was wonderful singing. Everyone had a great time.
But you're probably relieved as well. But are you happy about the visit?
Yeah, I'm very happy about the visit. The president was able to see a lot, to talk to a lot of people. His primary meetings were, of course, at the palace and with President Aquino and with the government. But he also got out and spoke to Filipino and American troops. He was able to visit the American military cemetery, where not just American veterans, American soldiers are buried, but also Filipino allies of ours from World War II. He saw a new bus, the Comet, which is an electric bus that we hope will have some ability to enter into the Manila market and help reduce pollution, and also add to, it's a very nice project because it's a joint U.S.-Filipino venture. So he was able to do quite a bit, and you know, he spent part of his childhood in Southeast Asia. He feels very comfortable here. He was able to participate in this sense, and here in the Philippines, in what I think is a renewal of our relationship in many ways. It's a new century, it's the 21st century, and the issues that we're dealing with now and grappling with are 21st century issues and interests.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Southeast Asia, but that was in Indonesia, not the Philippines. Was this his first visit to the Philippines?
It was his first visit in the Philippines, but there are some similarities in the region.
Yeah. Okay, you probably spent more time with President Obama in the Philippines than almost anybody. You were probably in the chopper with him and in the hotel giving him briefings, that kind of thing. Would you care to share any favorite highlights that the public or the media did not see, a personal side of him?
Well, he, as I mentioned, Howie, he enjoyed himself at the dinner and with the entertainment. But he also, he knows a lot of different parts of Filipino life. He mentioned the balut, for example, and he knew about it, and I was asking questions about it. One of his Secret Service agents went out that night and ate balut.
But he wasn't grossed out like a lot of other
Well,
foreigners,
I don't know. I can't say. But he knows a lot about this region. He was able to say, for example, as we flew over part of Manila, and he saw the expanse of houses and some of the poverty of Manila also, the varied parts of the city, and he pointed out to some of the other people how that was different than Kuala Lumpur, which he had just seen. So he was able to integrate that experience, this experience, into his others in Southeast Asia.
So he was exposed, at least from an aerial point of view, to the vast inequalities in the Philippines.
Absolutely.
Compared to, but that was one criticism of the visit. I mean, there wasn't a lot of the people-to-people interaction that occurred perhaps in the previous countries that he visited. He visited a university in one other country. He didn't really have an audience with young people, young Filipinos, despite the fact that America, of course, is going to play a big part in the future of this country and the future of the world.
Well, we did, and the president was involved in the ASEAN Youth Summit that we hosted here in Manila last December. And participated in an ASEAN Youth Summit event in Kuala Lumpur. So I think he was very much aware of the regional aspects of the rebalance and of U.S. involvement in the entire region. He did speak to troops. He was out at Fort Bonifacio and had that event with Filipino soldiers. But you can only do a certain amount in 24 hours.
That's right, that's right. Okay, well, one of the issues that has come out about his visit and about EDCA was the commitment of the United States to defend the Philippines, especially now where China is a rising power and I guess a rising threat to a lot of people, not just in the Philippines. Because he did say that the commitment was ironclad, but at the same time, he said that the United States does not want to contain China. Do you see any ambivalence there or any conflict in those statements?
Howie, let me go back to the origins of the rebalance and what the United States policy is in the region. And it begins with the economies of the region, with the idea that China as a rising economic power, a rising power, Southeast Asia, rising economies, the Philippines is part of that, 7.2% growth last year, and continuing to grow this year. The security aspects of the rebalance are part of our overall policy to lend some ability and some security so that the economic parts of the rebalance can also take place. This is not aimed at China's rise. We welcome China's rise. At the same time, we recognize that there are issues, there are concerns, there are tensions in the West Philippine Sea, the South China Sea, over certain claims. And what the President said was a very strong statement of invoking what is there for everyone to see, which is the Mutual Defense Treaty, which has served us well and served regional security well for over 60 years. And what he said is that the mutual defense commitments within the treaty are ironclad, and they are as relevant today in the 21st century. That doesn't mean we don't want these issues in the West Philippine Sea, the South China Sea, to be handled in a way that are legal and peaceful and diplomatic, where, for example, the Philippines brings a case before the tribunal under the law of the sea, which is a perfectly legitimate way to try to resolve disputes. We support that. But we don't want this to be seen as a direct challenge to China. But we are very clear at the same time to China that we oppose coercive efforts, intimidation to try to settle these disputes. So if you take it all together, I think people can see clearly where we are. And but it's not to try to confront China over these issues. We want to see them settled peacefully and legally, as does the Philippine government.
Of course, the Philippines is not the only country that feels threatened by China. Japan, of course, which President Obama also visited, has some issues with China as well, territorial issues. And so people are kind of comparing, President Obama's statements in Japan with what he said in the Philippines. And one of the things he said in Japan was, our treaty commitment to Japan's security is absolute. The Article 5 covers all territories under Japan's administration, including Senkaku Islands. Okay, very specific territory. While his statements here in the Philippines did not make any mention of specific territories in the Spratlys, anywhere in the West Philippine Sea. I'm sure these were very carefully crafted statements. I mean, what accounts for the difference there?
Well, the difference, as you just read, Howie, is historical and has to do with the administration of the Senkakus, which has a historical relationship also to the United States from the post-World War II period. But all of these statements are carefully crafted. Diplomatic state kinds of statements always are. And the ones here were carefully crafted too.
So, one interpretation there is the United States believes in the claim of Japan over those territories and does not believe in the Philippine claim over its own territories.
But read it carefully. That's not what it says. Okay. The United States has not taken a side on the claims over the Senkakus or any of the other disputes. What we have said is that because of the history of those, some of those claims, the administration over those claims at the moment, that they apply to the statement that the President made about mutual defense.
Okay, one of the worries about this is that there's a lot of publicity about this agreement and the alliance. In case of a conflict between the United States and another country, which may not be the enemy of the Philippines, wouldn't that drag the Philippines into a war that the United States has with another country?
Not necessarily. I think, again, what we ought to not get into hypotheticals when we're talking about these kinds of issues, because nothing is determined in advance about what the circumstances of the particular incident or issue might be. And so I don't think it serves any good purpose to really go through various iterations and hypotheticals. It's enough to say that we have an ironclad commitment to the defense of the Philippines should it be attacked. It's enough to say that we don't believe that China should use coercion and intimidation to settle disputes. At the same time, I think it's clear, both here and in Northeast Asia, we don't take a position on the individual claims. We think those should be decided through legal, peaceful, and diplomatic means, but not through coercion and intimidation. So I think it's rather the behavior rather than the claim itself, which is at issue with the West Philippine Sea issues at the moment.
Okay, well, there have been some questions also about the need for EDCA in the first place, because, I mean, me as a journalist, when I travel to Mindanao, I see U.S. troops. They're doing engineering works, helping repair roads, but also, who knows what else they're doing down there, right? And we know that there are military drones helping in intelligence and surveillance, that kind of thing. There's a lot of joint activity. And they already have access to Philippine facilities. So what will EDCA really add in terms of security? I mean, that the U.S. was not really able to do previously.
What the EDCA will allow is for an increased rotational presence of U.S. forces here with the mutual agreement of the Philippine side in certain locations that will help the Philippines as it develops its own minimum credible defense, which means a better ability to deal with maritime security, maritime domain issues, to respond to humanitarian disasters with pre-positioned equipment and supplies, the kinds of joint training that we can do on a more regular basis, like the big exercise we're doing now, Balikatan, which we will continue to do. You're right, this is a kind of evolutionary step derived from our Mutual Defense Treaty and the Visiting Forces Agreement. It's not something that is completely revolutionary. So it has a component which is meant to help the Philippines as it develops its defense capabilities. It also gives the United States, from our side, more of a presence in the region as well. So it's mutually beneficial.
So in other words, we're talking about scale of presence. I mean, because under the VFA, we already had Balikatan, and we've had all of these joint activities, and there have been U.S. troops in various, especially in Mindanao, for extended periods of time. But now, I guess what you're saying is EDCA allows an even larger rotational presence.
It allows for a rotational presence. And by the way, none of this is yet fully decided in terms of locations and numbers. Those are issues that are going to be decided through our relationship on the Mutual Defense Board that meets between the two countries. Everything that will be done will be mutually agreed between the two sides. So what the EDCA does is it lays out a kind of framework, gives the authorities on both sides to carry this out, but it doesn't lay out yet exactly what is going to be done.
Any preferred locations? U.S. wants to go back to Subic. I mean, that's a nice place to be. Yeah. Good beaches.
I don't want to prejudge what the Mutual Defense Board will do.
Yeah. So what's the timetable now? I mean, when will? I'm sure. Have you started talking about the specifics, the locations?
Well, we've had some very general discussions about that, and at the next meetings of the properly constituted committees between the two governments, we'll start talking about more specifics. But we hope to have some activity in not too long.
Yeah. Okay. We have senators in this country who are demanding that they have more involvement. In fact, some of them are saying that this should have been approved as a treaty. What kind of process did this have to go through in the United States? This is not considered a treaty. It's just an executive agreement.
No, it's not considered a treaty. It's considered an executive agreement. I signed it for the U.S. I was designated as the person to do it. And it stands as an executive agreement because it derives, from our point of view, from the Mutual Defense Treaty and from the Visiting Forces Agreement. Those are the texts that allow us to carry this out. We, under our system, are allowed to go ahead and do that without any kind of congressional action. There's a lot of congressional interest, and part of what was negotiated so that we can access the military construction funds appropriated by Congress, so that we can have an ability to make this actually a practical agreement. So we were very sensitive, obviously, to the will of Congress and what it has to see in an agreement. But that's pretty standard for us.
So, as far as Congress is concerned, their main interest is the funding of this. It's not necessarily that we are an important bastion of the
No,
US,
absolutely. No, I think that's almost a given. That's why it's not at all controversial. The Philippines is considered a great ally of the United States. I visited with many senators in the United States before I came to the Philippines during my confirmation process. And there's a tremendous amount of support for the Philippines, and a tremendous amount of support when I mentioned this agreement, which was in the early stages of negotiation, for it. And it's not controversial because there's tremendous bipartisan support. So it's just the opposite of what you were indicating.
So, any words about the issue of criminal jurisdiction and custody of possible wrongdoers?
Well, a couple of things. The VFA lays out the way these kinds of issues are supposed to be handled, and we discussed that with the Philippine government also about the various aspects of the VFA. What I'd also say is we all know there was a very serious case here over the last, it ended, I guess, about 5 years ago. But if you think about the thousands and thousands of U.S. troops that have come through here over the years and the very small number of incidents, we take very seriously Philippine law. We've impressed on our military colleagues the need for them to also pound this home with the troops, with the soldiers and sailors who come through. And I think we do a very good job. I understand the sensitivities on this side, but people should be reassured that we do everything we can and to respect Philippine law and to make sure that our soldiers and sailors comport themselves well while they're here.
Okay, we all know that the U.S. government is under a tight budget. So, I mean, who pays for what? I mean, I'm sure the Philippines has some kind of counterpart here, but you talked about military construction funds. So what exactly will be constructed, and what is expected on the Philippine side? And
what we're looking at are projects that will benefit the Philippines that also make sense to us. For example, if the particular airport needs an apron extended, either for the purpose of future humanitarian disaster relief efforts or for any other reason. If a port needs to be dredged to deepen it, or a wharf built to help with the repair of ships, and those are the kinds of projects that we can access military construction funds to try to build and construct.
The Philippine side, I mean, what does the United States expect from the Philippines, or does it expect anything from the Philippines aside from allowing access to the facilities?
No, there are, of course, are going to be some things that the Philippines will want to do on their own. They'll want to buy equipment on their own. They'll want to, as it goes about...
For the facilities that the U.S. will be helping construct?
The facilities that we construct, we're going to pay for.
So the Philippines will be basing equipment there, and
yes, these are after all these are facilities that are part of a Philippine base and under the AFP, where the AFP will have access, where the AFP will be working jointly with us. These are joint projects, and we work very cooperatively. You mentioned Mindanao earlier. That's how it has worked there. And it's worked very well. And there have been no problems in this regard.
Okay.
In terms of access, in terms of joint any kind of spending issues. There hasn't been an issue.
Okay, something else that was on President Obama's agenda, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP, which is a free trade alliance being pushed by your country. I mean, what do you think the Filipinos can get from it?
Well, at the moment there are 12 countries that are discussing the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the establishment of the TPP. What it will do is it will bring modern trading standards to the entire region, and not just East Asia, but also part of the Pacific.
Your side of the Pacific.
Exactly. And so the idea is that it will be a very modern agreement that also brings into force labor and environment standards, things that are kind of state-of-the-art, as the trade negotiators would call it. And for the Philippines, the eventual membership would require reforms. It would require modernization here. You know of the charter change issues that are being discussed here. The Philippines has expressed its interest, has said that they would like to join, but they have to figure out how to go about doing that in a way that makes sense for the Philippines, and these are issues and decisions that will have to be made here.
Earlier, we discussed the EDCA and President Obama's recent visit to the Philippines. We want to move on to other matters. So you were at the State Department Organized Technology Camp just yesterday, where there was a lot of talk about using digital tools for a lot of social purposes. But also, there was talk about open data and transparency. And of course, we have a big issue in the Philippines about freedom of information, which you've had a freedom of information law in the United States for a long time. I wanted to ask you, you have a lot of experience in government. How transparent do you think governments should be about data?
I think, you know, you'd be surprised because people always think sort of in the back of their mind they're not being straight with you, they're not coming forward with information. I would say that 98% of the information in this world is open for everyone to see. And it's a very small and limited amount of information that governments hold to themselves that are in the either intelligence realm or are considered real secrets. Most of those, too, get into the press, into the New York Times or Washington Post in our context very quickly also. So there's very little that isn't there for the public to see.
Yeah, but that 10% could be pretty damaging.
2%.
Oh, 2%, sorry, that 2%. Still could be pretty damaging. But I wanted to bring up the WikiLeaks release of State Department cables going back many decades, and you know, of course, we in the Philippines found the U.S. ambassador to the Philippines cables quite interesting about Marcos and Imelda and what they were doing privately and all of that. You were the head of State Department Intelligence, Assistant Secretary for State Department Intelligence when WikiLeaks released this large volume of confidential cables going way back. I'm just wondering, I mean, how has that affected the work of diplomats like yourself? You still have to report somehow to your home country, you know, I mean, in as frank a way as possible. So are you less frank now? Because one day, you know, WikiLeaks or something similar to that will be leaking your cables?
No, absolutely not. We have to be honest, and we have to tell our governments what we think is happening in a particular country. But the WikiLeaks and the cables, per se, were not intelligence information. They were candid observations, they were reflections of conversations that took place, they were supposed to be confidential, just as you hope that the email you send to your friend would be kept confidential too, and that someone wouldn't take it and put it out front for everybody to see. We've lost a lot of privacy in this world. And that's just something we have to live with the advent of all of this technology. It's in some ways very sad to me because of our concerns about privacy, everybody's right to have a certain amount of information that isn't public, but that's just the way it is, and we have to deal with that. Now, in government, we have some greater ability to do that by limiting access to information, making sure that someone from the Defense Department doesn't have access to those cables or could download them or wasn't watched properly, as was the case in WikiLeaks. But there's a bigger societal issue about privacy, about the loss of that privacy, about our ability to communicate with each other without having it exposed to the world. And we're at the point where I think everything, although, as I say, I think most of the things that I deal with, most of the big issues I dealt with in Washington get out to the public, it still is, there still is some small amount of information that we need to protect, to save lives, to go after terrorists, to do things to protect our countries and our people.
Okay, this concern is important to a lot of Filipinos, especially in the United States. The status of illegal immigrants, or I guess in previous eras they were called illegal aliens. Any change in policy about maybe millions of illegal immigrants in the United States, and among them a lot of Filipinos?
Well, the administration has a very active effort to try to change the immigration status of illegals in the U.S. And and it's run into some opposition. It's a controversial domestic political issue in the United States. And I think there's more support for it now, for trying to see if there are ways to allow illegal immigrants to have some sort of status, to recognize their children. You've seen that the Obama administration has not been as active in trying to deport school-age children. It's a difficult issue to both try to bring together the legal requirements and the human dimension. But there is an effort underway, but it's also difficult politically. Especially we have our own election year in the U.S., 2014, and these are very politicized issues.
Yeah, well, something related to that is, well, the United States is very concerned also about human trafficking, and there have been human trafficking victims from the Philippines in the United States. What's the usual fate of human trafficking victims in the United States? And some of these are teachers. Teachers are now stranded in New York, awaiting their fate.
Well, we work very closely with the Philippine authorities on human trafficking issues, and what we look for in the efforts of countries is that there are active kinds of involvement by the police, by the government, to try to counteract human trafficking. And yes, we've had people brought to the United States and abused there. And we have a legal system that's able to deal with it. The Philippines also has active efforts to do that. We work very closely through our Homeland Security Department and the NBI here and various law enforcement here to try to address it. We've had some success. You saw the other day, this was a little bit of a variant on it, but it has some relationship to human trafficking, this sextortion case where the Homeland Security Department worked with British authorities and Philippine authorities to break that case. In some instances, it also has a human trafficking element, since children and women are coerced into being part of pornographic and other activities that are just horrendous.
Okay, your last ambassadorial post was in Bolivia, which did not end very happily in 2008 because you were asked to leave by an unfriendly government. How would you compare your Philippine stint so far? I mean, any lessons from Bolivia that you're applying in your new post?
Well, our relationship with the Philippines is long, it's rich, historic, and very, very friendly. And the people of the Philippines have a very friendly view of the United States. And while many Bolivians did as well have a very good view of the U.S., the government certainly did not, and wanted to also have used the United States as a kind of way to enhance itself politically. So I kind of got caught in all of that, but that's part of my profession. That's what I signed up to do.
Okay, well, you mentioned you know, the friendliness to the United States here, but there's also protesters, you know, people who don't like at least the U.S. foreign policy. I mean, so what's your overall impression? I mean, right outside the U.S. Embassy,
well,
almost every week there's a protest.
Howie, you know, I look out and there are 100 or 200 people, and then I read in the newspaper that 85% of the Philippine public has a favorable view of the United States. In fact, more Filipinos have a favorable view of the U.S. than Americans have a favorable view, according to that survey. There are 3.5 million Filipino Americans now, as you mentioned. There are 350,000 Americans living here. The kind of family and relationships and friendships that exist are extraordinary. And yes, there are small groups of people who oppose us or oppose our foreign policy. And that's fine. It's a democracy. People should have the right to protest. People should have the right to oppose what we do. I think it should be done respectfully. It should be done factually and logically. And that's what I try to do as I talk to groups that might oppose what we're doing.
Okay, some viewers sent in some questions through Twitter, if I may just read some of them. Ramses Javier Casten asks, what is the U.S. stand on Sabah, granting that President Obama visited both the Philippines and Malaysia, both claimant states, to Sabah? I suppose are you taking sides there? You're not taking sides there.
No, I'm not, nor are we. But what I can tell you is that one issue that is of deep concern is the illegal activity of some of the groups in the southern Philippines, as we read in the papers this morning, like Abu Sayyaf, who have taken hostages, in some cases from Sabah, other cases from the high seas. That's an issue of concern for the United States, for Malaysia, for the Philippines, and we're trying to look for ways that maybe we can help and bring a greater effort to try to stop that kind of brigandry, piracy, and hostage-taking. That's a very serious issue.
Yes, thank you. Okay, this question will test your skills at diplomacy. Super Jeremy is wondering if there will be a match between Manny Pacquiao and the American boxer Floyd Mayweather. Who would you put your money on?
Well, I have to say this. Floyd Mayweather is, as you said, an American boxer. Manny Pacquiao is my neighbor. He has a house a couple of streets away.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit more worried about Manny Pacquiao being on his bad side than Floyd Mayweather. But I hope they get together. I think it'd be a great fight. I mean, that's what everyone wants to see.
That's what everyone is waiting for.
Yeah.
Anything that has come as a complete surprise about our country or culture?
That's a good question. I don't think there's anything that's come as a complete surprise. I think it's been sort of a bit... when I was up in Baguio, where we have the famous summer residence up there, I was struck. I was walking through pines in the mountains, and I said to myself, I'm not in the Philippines. So there's a diversity that exists in the Philippines that maybe a lot of people don't appreciate among people, among different regions, among languages, that you know, might have all sort of be lumped together in the U.S. as one thing, and it's a little bit more complicated than that.
All right, and you're just scratching the diversity of this country. You have, what, how many more years to go?
2.5, probably.
2.5, okay. Yeah. A lot of time to see beaches, more mountains.
I have plenty of time to see the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight.
Well, we're crossing our fingers. That's not a lot of time for these guys. I mean, they're getting up there in years. Thank you very much for your time and for your insights and sharing your
nice to be
frank
with you.
answers. Maraming salamat po, U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Philip Goldberg. We wish you success, and we hope to see you again here on our show.
Thank you.